Good evening, everyone. So nice to be in your association this evening. So we'll continue our study of 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Before we do so, let's chant these mantras to show our respect to and gratitude to our teacher or teachers. These 6 mantras show the deep gratitude and respect that we have for those who have illuminated our path, our journey with the torchlight of knowledge. Excuse me for 1 second. I hear it. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. I just heard an echo. So we'll chant these mantras. Mantra. Man means mind. Tra means to free, to liberate the mind. So mantra, the Sanskrit language, has a very powerful effect. There's been a lot of research, especially coming out of India, on sound vibration and the effects on the brain. And mantra, specifically in the Sanskrit language, has a tremendous amount of potency in enriching the brain and the brain function. But beyond that, we know that the mantras carry a very potent spiritual vibration, which links us up. Thus yoga. Yoga means to link or to connect or union with, and links us up with the self, the true nature of the self, and the supreme self. So for those of you who know the mantras, you can chant with me, and for those of you who don't, you can simply meditate on the sound and cultivate within your heart an attitude of gratitude towards those that have helped you on your path. Om Jnana Timurandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Uttale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanto Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirbhishesha Shunyavadi Pastitya Deshotarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, we'll begin where we last read in chapter 15, Bhagavad Gita as it is. This particular translation by my teacher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Bhagavad Gita as it is. And one time, Prabhupada was asked, why is the Bhagavad Gita, why do you say as it is? And his response, he says, it's not as I interpret it, it's as it is, as it was spoken by Krishna. And that's what we should hear. So, very powerful translation. So we're on text 8, I believe, in the Gita, the 15th chapter, called the Yoga of the Supreme Person. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So here in this particular verse, as been mentioned in the 8th chapter and other places in the Gita, Krishna is talking about the continuity of the soul and the soul's existence. It's not like we are fatalists, that this is it. You know, you're born, you live, you die, so try to cram it all in. That's not the philosophy of yoga. And specifically not the philosophy contained here in the Bhagavad Gita. And even logically, we can see, we try to think of non-existence. Can you imagine in the deepest recesses of your mind, non-existence, that you never exist, that there was complete blank void prior to you taking birth, and then that will be it. The sum and substance of who you are will be snuffed out at the time of death. Doesn't make sense, because we see a continuum. As our bodies change, we can see objectively, especially now when we're older, when we're adults, we can see, and practically experience the continuum as we go through changes of body from baby to boy or girlhood to adolescence, young adulthood, middle adulthood, old age. The body's changed. We could see that from family photos. I think that's Jai Krishna's photo there. You must be, what, in your 30s or 40s in that picture? So we could see the change through our family album, through our pictures, how the body has changed. But the continuum is observed, or the changes are observed by that constant, the constant factor. What is the constant factor? It's consciousness. It may be facilitated better as we grow older and gain a certain amount of wisdom, a certain depth of wisdom, but it is the constant factor. So logically, philosophically, according to the philosophy and psychology of yoga, this understanding that there is a change of body. So Krishna uses here another metaphor. He uses the metaphor as aroma or scent is separate from wind or the breeze, because the breeze may go over a garden of flowers, or here in our household, roses and gardenias are our two favorite flowers because they're so fragrant, especially when you get certain types of roses and the gardenias. There are several types of gardenias also. And when you get the gardenias, the fragrance is wonderful. And we have a nice bush here called La Dama de la Noche, or the Night Queen. And when it's blossoming, you go outside, and if there's always a nice breeze here. When you go outside, you smell La Dama de la Noche, the Night Queen, even it may be 20, 30 feet away. So the fragrance, which is exuding from the flower, is carried by the breeze. And that same breeze may go over sewage. So the same breeze that can carry the sweetness of a rose or a gardenia can also carry the toxicity or the rankness of sewage. So Krishna uses that. It's a nice analogy. He says, just as air carries these aromas, so the living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another. We've heard of the concept of reincarnation, that previously we had an identity, and then at the time of death we reincarnate. And in some cases that have been documented throughout the world, there are actually several nice books which talk about this. Certain beings are actually able to remember either in partially or fully their previous birth. We can understand our previous birth by understanding the inclinations that we have. In Sanskrit, it's called samskaras. And samskaras means that impressions that are made in the element called mind. Mind, from the Gita perspective, is an element that is energized and motivated by the presence of soul. So every impression that we take into the mind is stored. It's made into an impression. And if you do something consistently, then that impression goes deeper and deeper and deeper. For instance, one time in a conversation with my teacher, one student said to him, he was remarking about how what's his name? Ravi Shankar, the great sitar player. How amazing Ravi Shankar. And Prabhupada's immediate response was 7 lifetimes. That's what his response to the compliment to Ravi Shankar. And the student was a little perplexed by that comment. And he said, what do you mean 7 lifetimes? He says, and Prabhupada responded, it takes 7 lifetimes to become a master at anything. So if you see someone who is particularly a master, musical master, artistic master, any kind of master, then according to the Vedic notion, that means that person has deep sanskars, and in previous births has done the same thing. Was a musician in a previous birth and very easily developed musical talent. And some people are tone deaf, and they can't carry a melody for the life of them. So obviously one soul who has an inclination, musical inclination, artistic inclination, has had connection with that path before, whereas a person may not be adept. There's nothing to indicate that that person is lesser, because we all have our strengths and our weaknesses. But what it does mean is that the conceptions from previous lives, as Krishna is saying here, is carried over, is carried in. So you do not come into this world as a blank slate. Sometimes people think that the child comes into the world with a blank slate. No, it's not. Child will show their if you're very astute, a child will show their inclinations very, very early on. So they may show tendencies that they haven't had a chance to cultivate or even be conditioned by. But if you're an astute parent, you'll see that my child has an inclination towards speech, or my child has an inclination towards art or music. I've seen videos. In fact, we have a video of our son. He's maybe anywhere from 10 months to a year old maximum. And he's in the middle of a kirtan, and he's playing the kartals right on beat. And I've seen adults, try to keep the rhythm, and they can't. So how is it that a 10-month-old, 11-month-old child is able to pick up rhythm and to be right on it? There's some, conception, some inclination, some sanskar impression that has been there, and slowly, as the child's facility, mind, intelligence begins to expand, then those are coming out. Those impressions will be facilitated to come out. So Krishna here says that these we carry, just as the wind or the breeze carries aromas, and we carry our conceptions from this body to the next body, and however bodies that we may take during the course of our sojourn, because basically there is purpose behind our journey. And whether we realize the purpose of it or not, still, that does not negate the fact that we are here, we are on a journey, and there is a specific reason. And that reason, in general, universally speaking, is to understand the true nature of the self. And to the degree that we begin to understand the true nature of the self, that is the degree that we're able to cultivate a maturity or a mature perspective in terms of our involvement with the world. An immature perspective is very self-centered. Oh, why is this person doing this to me? Why is this person saying this about me? We have a tendency to, me. without the consideration that I do the same thing. I may talk about another person, etc., etc. Rather than understanding the fact that I'm in every single situation because I place myself in that situation. So therefore, these things that occur to me, painful or joyful, are because we've earned them due to things that we've done in our previous lives. And now we're realizing the fruits of our actions or the reactions to our actions, and that's called karma. So this is one thing to consider very deeply in terms of reviewing our life and the purpose of life, the point of life. What is my journey? How do I direct myself? When one goes on a journey, we're very fortunate nowadays because we have GPS. So all we really need to know is the address where we're going. But you remember the days prior to GPS? You got out the map and you mapped your course, or you stopped several times. Hey, is this town that way? And yeah, you make a left, you make a right, you turn, go up 2 miles. The person may give you very elaborate directions that you forget. So unless you know the course that you're to take, it's very hard to get to your destination. So the whole point of knowledge, the whole point of studying texts like Bhagavad Gita is to gain the knowledge of the purpose of my journey. And not only the purpose of my journey, the destination of my journey. What am I doing and why am I doing it? Where is this all leading me to? Because Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita, previous in the 8th chapter, he says, what you're thinking of at the time of death, that thought is like propulsion. It propels you to your next destination. And what we're thinking about is really the result of what we're cultivating, the life that we're cultivating, is it not? Like if you're doing something all day, right? You're really immersed, you're really absorbed in something all day. At night, there's a good chance that you'll dream about what you've been doing all day. Because you're thinking about it so intensely. And that's, quite frankly, the reason why people have sleep difficulties, because they may have gotten on a loop about their problems or their illnesses or whatever the case may be. They get into a loop, and it stays with them. So therefore, when Arjuna presented to Krishna in the first and beginning of the 2nd chapter his dilemma, Krishna gives him a process of cultivating a particular mindset that will help us to transcend what is going on to us in this world. Because basically, the kind of mindset we should cultivate is things are not happening to us, they are happening for us. And really the question that we should be asking when something seemingly bad happens to us, then what is the lesson behind us? And if we cope or deal with our situations, the numerous situations that come up in the course of our life, which are causing us anxiety, if we deal with them in that way, we say to, what is the cause of this? What lesson is it teaching? We may make many mistakes, but if we see a mistake as a lesson, then it's not a mistake. It's actually a progressive stepping stone on our life. So Krishna is giving us this knowledge, and I'll discuss what that means in the next couple of verses. This is 9 in the 15th chapter, 15, 9th verse. The living entity, thus taking another gross body. So here Krishna is saying, you're bringing, previous verses, you're bringing your conceptions from a previous body. Now he's saying, thus taking another gross body. Gross body refers to this outer shell, because Krishna, as well as psychologists, will say there's a gross body and a subtle body. And your subtle body is comprised of mind and the various aspects of mind, intelligence, and ego. The ability to discriminate or discern, and ego is the identification factor that we all have. So gross body. So this gross body, Krishna is saying, your new gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Now let me read 10 also, because it's tied into here. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. All right, so we get these senses, we get this gross body. The gross body is equipped with the ability to see, to hear, to touch, to taste, to feel, etc. And those senses reach out, right? You reach out with your eyes to see things. You reach out with your ears to hear things. Like right now, I hear my voice. I also hear the train in the distance. So our senses are constantly reaching out, and what it comes in contact with, depending on which sense it is called the sense object, according to Krishna here in the Gita. It's the objects that the senses come in contact with. So right now, I hear my voice, but I hear the train going by. My sense of hearing is taking in my voice, but it is also getting other background music, and it's recording. The body and the senses, the gross body, the senses in the gross body, and the subtle body called mind, intelligence, ego are so fine-tuned, so acute, that they can do multiple things and simultaneously, do multiple things with the input that's coming when the senses reach out. The mind immediately takes it in. The mind stores it in impressions. That's right. Every single thing that's coming through our senses is stored by the mind in terms of impressions. And then the mind will make sense of the impressions, categorize them, put them in order, store them in memory. The mind's doing all these incredible amount of things at amazing speed, and sometimes simultaneously, taking in various thoughts simultaneously. So that's an amazing feature of what we have in ears. So he thus enjoys a particular set of senses. So the mind comes with previous conceptions and desires, and the way the senses work is according to the mind's desires. Then the mind will direct the senses. In other words, we'll be attracted to a particular type of sense object. If the mind has an intense desire for eating, or for the opposite sex, or for knowledge, or for many different things, there'll be an acuity, there'll be an ability, and also a direction coming from the mind to seek out those things wherever you go. Like, for instance, you go walking in a downtown bookstore. You're walking in downtown, like here in Boca, we have Meisner Park, and you're walking in that area. And depending on the desires that are there, like if your tongue, your desire, the urge that you have is to eat, the tongue is saying eat, 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 then you notice all the restaurants. Oh, here's a restaurant, Italian restaurant. Here's a Chinese restaurant. Oh, look, here's an ice cream place. You kind of reach out because you have those desires very strongly there. Or you may be very attracted to the opposite sex, and the women are looking at the man, and the man's looking at the woman, and this type of woman, that. So we direct according to our desires these senses that's grouped around the mind. But the foolish, the word Krishna kind of uses on a number of occasions to identify someone who is misappropriating the resources that they've been given. And those resources that we've been given is body, senses, and mind. And if we misappropriate them, abuse them, then they actually work against us. And we see again and again that a person, when they reach a certain age, the body only has a certain degree of shelf life. And depending on how you take care of it or don't take care of it, you'll experience, disease and the symptoms of old age at various ages. Some people in their 50s are experiencing the pains and the sufferings and the miseries of old age. Some people at 80 are still very youthful and have a spring in their step. So it depends, how you've used or abused your body and your mind over the course of time. If you used your mind to cultivate knowledge, then the mind remains sharp. They did a study on longevity, and they used as a model for their study a nunnery. I believe it was in Michigan or Minnesota. And the reason they chose that particular nunnery is because most, if not all, the nuns were living to be 90 and 90 to 100. The average nun in that nunnery lived to be at least 90 to 100. So when they did their research, the conclusion of their research was because these nuns were in an order of nuns that were teachers, and they taught all their life, which means they kept using their brain, acquiring knowledge, disseminating knowledge. That whole process of acquiring knowledge and giving out knowledge really keeps the mind sharp. Anyone that you know who lives to be an old body, an old age, but has a very sharp mind, if you do a study of that person, more than likely they continue to use their mind by reading crossword puzzles, philosophy, any way which gives that muscle, the brain, the exercise that it needs in order to stay sharp. And it's just like the body. If you do not use the body, then when you get older, you get stiff. You sit down for a little while, you get up and you're all stiff. But if you've had some epiphany about life and you get into an exercise regime, you see that I'm not experiencing the stiffness and the soreness and the pain in my joints as much as I was before. So all of these things are things that we learn in the course of time. So the mind, it has its desires and directs the senses, and the senses reach out and acquire according to the desires of the mind. But the foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body. So that, understanding death Most people are afraid of the whole notion of death, and they avoid the topic like the plague, and they don't want to think about it in terms of their own demise. So because they can't understand, if you're not actively pursuing an understanding of the purpose of life and death in relationship to me, and what am I going to do at that particular time? If you don't ask yourself that question, then you certainly cannot avoid the inevitable. You're just sticking your head in the sand like an ostrich. Better to say, okay, I'm getting older, I'm in my 70s or my 60s, whatever, and I may have another decade left, or I may have another 20 years, but that's going to go fast. How am I going to cope with that moment? Most people just say, oh, I'm going to live each day. I'm just going to be here now and live the day, and which is fine. That should be done simultaneous to inquiry about the purpose of my life. It's not that we just live moment to moment and squeeze out all the nectar of each moment. Okay, that's fine. To be mindful is a very good place to be in, but also to try to understand my whole purpose of life. So people who are influenced by ignorance, they simply avoid. They simply ignore. Ignorance means to ignore, the ability to ignore, or the tendency to ignore. Just ignore. The best friend you could have is a person who is really honest with you, and always in a very palatable way, engages in conversation with you about the inevitabilities of life. This is a good friend, and we should cherish such friends. Text 11. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly, as opposed to the previous verse. The foolish cannot understand, but the endeavoring transcendentalist, meaning the person who has dedicated their life to understanding the true nature of the self in this material world. What is the distinction between the material world and the self? The person who is endeavoring, that person is called a transcendentalist, and that endeavor is called yoga. Yoga is the path of endeavoring to understand the true nature of the self in relationship with the Supreme Self. So the endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization, when you make an endeavor, a very regimented, conscious endeavor called yoga, you follow the yoga process. And when I say yoga, I'm not simply referring to physical yoga, because physical yoga, according to the masters of yoga, is just meant to allow you to be in a body that's suitable to perform meditation. That is the purpose of the physical part of yoga, so that you can do asana, you can sit in a position that's comfortable and won't cause you disturbance when you are engaged in your meditation. Because there are many books, the Sankhya Yoga, Sharirika, the Hatha Yoga, Pradipika, many different yogic texts besides Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and Krishna's Bhagavad Gita. They all point to the fact that yoga is meant to bring one to the point of meditation. Meditation on the true nature of the self. In our discipline of yoga called Bhakti Yoga, our meditation is how do we perform devotion to the Supreme to cultivate the loving relationship between me, the soul, and that supreme soul. How to cultivate my loving relationship. That is the yoga that we are following and recommended in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Yoga. Simply to do that. So the endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly. But those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is actually taking place, though they may try to, but they're not equipped. They're not equipped with the proper vision. Can you see molecular structure? Can you look at your computer and see the molecular structure that's there? We can't. Our vision isn't properly equipped. Maybe if we had proper equipment, that we could break it all down and see molecular structure. But as it is with the naked eye, we don't have the vision to see molecular structure. But does it exist? Yeah, of course it exists. But we can't see it. We've not cultivated the proper vision. So there's 3 types of vision that Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita. One that Krishna is going to mention shortly is called Jnana Chakshusha. Chakshusha means vision, but or Chakshusha means to see, vision. Jnana means knowledge. So cultivating a vision or a perspective which is coming from the reference point of knowledge. We are studying life and the purpose of life. And thus in our studies, these kinds of questions are proposed, and there are answers to these questions found in various sacred texts like the Bhagavad Gita. And to study that under the tutelage of a master who has realized and is living these truths is the best possible formula to cultivate the Jnana Chakshusha, the vision to see the distinction between what is matter and what is spirit, and how matter and spirit coexist in one body, and why priority should be given to spirit, because spirit is never ending, it's eternal, and matter is just something that we are living in for the moment, for the time being. It may be 80 years, or 90 years, or 100 years, but be certain that in a given time, our lease will run out, and the landlord will not renew the lease of that body. That body is going to merge in the totality of elements in the form of ashes if you're cremated, or dust if you're buried, or the stool of little animals like worms and the such. That's the future of our body. So cultivating knowledge means to know that is going to happen, that's going to be there. It should not put us in anxiety, but quite the opposite. Knowledge gives us purpose, and purpose enthuses us, encourages us. Just think of that word, encourage, gives us courage, enthuses us, encourages us, empowers us with the perspective, the honest, clear perspective about life and its purpose. Otherwise, not to inquire, what does Krishna call it? Foolish Foolish cannot understand. Why? The foolish they're afraid. Usually when there's fear, it's fear of the unknown. Death, fear of death. It's unknown. I don't know. I'm afraid. Fear of loss. Well, I don't know what I'll be like if I lose this person in my life or this possession in my life. Fear of loss. It's really based on the fear of the unknown. But Krishna goes to great lengths in the Bhagavad Gita to make the unknown known, to give us a perspective of our world, the world that you are living in and I am living in, to give us the proper perspective. And that comes to us by cultivating jnana, or knowledge. And then we begin to see things that we are studying, the knowledge that we are accruing from the great masters and the great sacred texts and all the things that are in there that are giving us this crystal clear and objective perspective. We can't be objective. We're very subjective. We're very self-centered. Things are all about me. So it's very difficult to become objective when it's about you. But if you are on a search for truth, no, you don't want any BS. You want the truth. You want to know, who am I? What is my purpose? When you start asking questions like that, you don't want jugglery, word jugglery. You want truth, because the truth will give you clarity, and the truth sets us free. So Krishna makes the comparison. The endeavoring transcendentalists can see all this clearly, but those whose minds are not developed, they have not taken the time, not making the endeavor to cultivate knowledge, they can't see. The second chakshusha is called divyam chakshush. In the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna wants to see this incredible aspect of God called Virat Rupa in Sanskrit, which means the universal form, which means a form of the Supreme wherein everything in the universe is contained in that one form. So if you're viewing that one form, you can see everything in the universe in that one form. So when Arjuna asks Krishna to please reveal this Virat Rupa, this universal form to him, Krishna says, you can't see. You don't have the eyes to see it. Divyam dadami te chakshush pasya me yogam aishwaryam. But it's not that Krishna leaves you there. You can't see, forget about it. You can't see. But he says, yogam aishwaryam, the mystical opulence of yoga that I give to you. In other words, divyam chakshush is less of something that you study intensely for and something that's given to you out of compassion. That is the process of bhakti yoga, where because we are making the endeavor to establish a loving relationship with the Supreme and trying to serve his desires, Krishna's desires, then because of that selfless approach to life, where we are seeing everything, we are cultivating a sight of gratitude, cultivating a sight of respect, cultivate a sight or a vision of compassion for all living entities. And when I say that, I mean all living entities. A person who is developing or cultivating a perspective of seeing the presence of the individual soul in all living entities, and knowing that that soul is equal. It's an equal vision. Krishna describes that in I think the 5th chapter of Gita, the equal vision. One sees with an equal vision. Doesn't matter, if a person's highly intellectual or a homeless person. It doesn't matter if it's a dog in the street. We're able to feel compassion for all living entities. Paradukka dukkhi means compassion that we have for all living entities, because we know that all life is the product of the presence of a soul, which is part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. Then we can feel even the suffering of trees or animals. That's why in most yoga processes, ahimsa is a very important practice that one must follow. What is ahimsa? Ahimsa means without violence, to live a life without violence. Because one who knows the nature of the soul, the self, and can see the presence of the varying individual souls within every life form, does not want to cause suffering to that life form, and therefore has compassion. So this is important. So Divyam Chakshush, the transcendental vision, is the result of the compassion of the Supreme Personality, God, giving it to us because that is our intense desire to be able to see. Arjuna had an intense desire to see this universal form. He also had an intense desire to see other manifestations of the Supreme, and Krishna gave him the vision to see, and that's called Divyam Chakshush. And then the third one is called, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ane naiva swachakshush. You can't see through your eyes under the influence of gunas. So I call it guna chakshush. I don't know within sacred texts if they refer to it like that. Here in the Gita, it says, Ane naiva swachakshusha. That means you can't see through your eyes if it's influenced by the material energy around you in the form of the gunas, or the modes of material nature. So that's generally what humanity suffers from. They suffer from guna chakshusha. They have a vision that only can see the externals and cannot see deeper than the externals. And therefore, if all you can see are the externals, your external body, your mind, external mind, and then you're going to live and suffer or enjoy according to what that immediate experience is. So you're cultivating a vision that is just viewing the external elements and their interplay, rather than going deeper and seeing what motivates them. Because those elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego, in and of themselves are not aware of themselves. But you are aware of yourself. That indicates there's a distinction between you and elements. Earth is not aware of itself. Fire is not aware of itself. Air water, ether, not aware of itself. Even when we study the nature of the mind is an element, and the mind has its function, its thought process and reason process. It's only because that element has the presence of soul, and that soul is emanating consciousness, and that consciousness uses mind to decipher the world around it. So this is an important thing to understand, that the elements, the 8 elements, 5 gross, 3 subtle, do not have the ability to be aware of itself. But we have the ability to be aware of ourselves, which indicates there is something beyond those 8 elements, beyond the earth, the water, the fire, the air, the ether that makes up the body, the mind, and its intelligence function and ego function. Something beyond that which has awareness and can cultivate an awareness of that self, the source of consciousness. We can come in contact with that. That's what the whole process of yoga is all about. So this 15th chapter is giving us an understanding that beyond the elements and even beyond the soul, which is motivating the elements, there is a supreme soul that is the source of both material elements and the soul itself. That source figure, that source personality, that source motivating force or energy, Krishna is elaborately describing what that is and who that is. I came across something that I thought was really funny. Let me see. No, not that. Not that. Okay, where is it? I came across something really funny the other day, and someone sent me a little excerpt of a thing that George Carlin, the famous comedian, was saying, and it was really, really fun. He's saying people's perspective of God is that there's someone up there in the air that's invisible, and you can't see him, and you can't hear him. And that someone up there who you can't see, or you can't hear, or you don't communicate with, is put you in this world with all of its problems and all of its sufferings, and that person who's up there, invisible, beyond your sense of vision or understanding, has given you 10 rules to follow. And if you break any one of those 10 rules, then he takes you and he puts you in a place where you're eternally damned to burn and suffer for an eternity. And he said, and that is God. And God loves you. Many people shy away from religion. Why? Because that's what they've been taught. Whether it's whatever Abrahamic religion or That's what you've been taught. So 15th chapter of the Gita is to identify the self and the self's relationship with the Supreme, so that we know that beyond all that, there is an actual supreme entity that you can correspond with, you can communicate with. You can develop a dialogue, you can develop an exchange, a reciprocation, and the result of that, cultivating that dialogue and that reciprocation, just like in any relationship that you've ever been in, the result of you having an open and honest dialogue with a person is what? You grow deeper in relationship with that person. You know more about that person. You respect more about that person. If the person gives you some time, values you and gives you time to hear you, and to hear in confidence, and to exchange in confidence, and to reciprocate with you, the end result of that, you think of your best friend. Why is that person your best friend? It's because you've gone through all that with them. The being a sounding board for them, and them being a sounding board for you, them knowing who you are and loving you anyway, without judgment. That's why you've developed the relationship that you've developed with your friend. So yoga, and most specifically and acutely bhakti yoga, is to develop that relationship with God. That communication, that open and honest dialogue. Because you know what? In the 15th verse, Krishna says, I'm in your heart. I'm seated right next to you. I'm there with you. I'm with you. And I know it anyhow. What if you know something about a person? Something secretive. That person doesn't know that you know. But then that person comes to you and confides in you about that secret. Even though you already know, you feel, wow, this person is trusting me. That's an aspect of love, is it not? Trust. You can't have love if you don't have trust. You can't have love if you don't have affection. You can't have love if you don't have respect. So that person comes to you with their secret. You may even already know the secret, but you feel, oh, this person trusts me. And that makes you have a tendency to grow in relationship with that person. And what destroys relationship? That you are secretive, you are hiding things, you're not honest, you're not truthful, you're not respectful. Your affection is reserved for when you want to give it, rather than giving it, causelessly, just showering a person with affection. So that's why we develop, if not divyam chakshusha, then at least jnana chakshusha, which will give us the reasons to cultivate such a relationship. So I've seemed to have run over. I apologize. I like to keep prompt. I know you all are, have a busy schedule. So I'll stop here. I'll open the floor for any questions or comments or observations, anything that you would like to share. Would be greatly appreciated by myself. Yeah.
I have to say, honestly, I've been listening to your classes for many, many, many years. And tonight was just, as much as I needed to hear your class tonight, was just so spot on. So I want to thank you for tonight. It was just perfect timing for this, your opinion, your commentaries, and everything. So if you can share this with me, can you share it with me what's up so I can hear it again?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
We'll be happy to do so, Jai Krishna. Always. Thank you, and thank you for your kind words. It's really helps me out. I see someone here making a comment. Someone who's shy. Let's see what we got here in comments. Another compliment. Thank you so much. I like your lessons and can listen nonstop. Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. And then I have a question. I believe it's from Gayatri. Is this Gayatri's question? Historically, Krishna told Bhagavad Gita at the beginning of the battle, and Bhishma passed away at the end. Why then Gita Jayanti follows Bhishma Panchaka and not vice versa? Wow, that is a great question, and which I do not know why the chronology. All right. Let me rest on that because that is a very good question, but it requires some meditation. So Gayatri, is that your question? I see G. There's a green G here, but there's also a red G here. So I don't know.
Yes, that's from Gayatri. It says that there.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Gayatri to everyone. Thank you. Gayatri, I will meditate on that. Bhishma Panchaka comes, and then Gita Jayanti, when Gita was spoken, is the celebration of the day, and that comes in December, and Gita Jayanti comes at the end of Kartik. Very good question, and if I can't come up with an answer, I will ask around and see what I get on that. I make you that promise, okay? Gayatri always comes up.
Thank you.
Ha-
Hare Krishna,
Yeah.
Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam. Thank you so much.
Who is that?
Prabhuji, is the book open the Bangla? Can you hear my voice? Audible?
It's barely audible, especially the first part of what you said.
Okay, I just want to say thank you so much, Prabhuji, for nice class.
Thank you.
I have some issues in microphone, but thank you, Prabhu.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for your kind words. Greatly appreciate it. So, to all of you, please have a happy, healthy, and holy week coming up. I will see you by Krishna's mercy next Wednesday evening, 7 o'clock, here at the at our Zoom chat room here. And if you have any other questions, Gayatri, if something else comes, please don't hesitate to contact me. And I love these questions. They're very stimulating, and they really keep me on the ball. I think as well as any presenter loves questions because it does, keep us sharp is what we're presenting. All right. Have a great evening. We'll see you
Hare
again.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.